Hello, everyone. This is Philosophy of the People with Stefan Birch, and I'm joined once again by Quinn, our intro and outro maker. And also, for the first time, I guess, in TIR, we've got Quinn and Stefan for 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
This week, we're going to be talking about the state of fantasy, especially in the context of one of its main authors, Brandon Sanderson. Fantasy seems to be in a continuous renaissance. You know, it gets bigger, and then it gets bigger. At least in terms of what's sold. The book I read recently, Strength of the Many, which I didn't think was nearly as good as the previous one, but that went to number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Also, notably, this is an author who started publishing out self-publishing and was only picked up in the mainstream for his second novel. That might be, I haven't put it in the notes, but talking about self-publishing might also be something to talk about, as well as serialized self-publishing online. And there's 2 big pulls on fantasy at the moment. There's romantasy, which is, you know, for whatever reason, it proved incredibly popular to mix the incredibly popular genre of romance with also making the men in it like monsters or fae or werewolves or vampires and so on and so forth. But more like not just tradition. For a while, there was like urban romance, fantasy, or whatever, like in the terms of werewolves and vampires in the present age. But what's become a lot more popular now is, you know, proper high fantasy, but it's a romance setting. Like the world is fantasy, but the plot is all romance.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side, the other big pull, is Brandon Sanderson. Basically, it's massive, epic books with complex lore, but at the same time, quite like a simple, basic writing style. I'm not particularly enthused about either things. I should actually read some romantasy at some point. I just struggle with heterosexual romance. But I did used to be a very big fan of Sanderson. So I thought it'd be interesting to discuss what is appealing about his work and what are the broader consequences it has on fantasy literature. Very importantly, Sanderson doesn't just write books. He also gives a great deal of advice on how one should write. He's the only big fantasy author who actively lectures on how one should write. This is because a while back, as part of his like tithe to the Mormon Church, he agreed to teach at BYU every semester. But yeah, I'm joined also a Brandon Sanderson reader.
Yeah, and I think that those, because a lot of those lectures are like recorded and uploaded.
Yes.
There's like, I think Sanderson outside of his books has this whole second life as like a existing in little clips that are, you know, writing advice or just kind of some of the advice is actually on writing, but a lot of it is like more on writing as like a career and not as like a specific craft. It's like, yeah, you have to think of what you're doing as a product and work this much and think about output and you can think about like you can be a better writer, but that's secondary to your output and your productivity.
No.
Which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something which you'd hope people would give advice out on, and I'm happy with Sanderson giving out advice on kind of the business of publishing rather than actually the structure of it.
Mm-hmm.
When did you? My reason my microphone's 8 miles away. When did you read Mistborn?
So I can double check it on my Goodreads. It was a few years ago. I think honestly, I think that I saw a clip of Brandon Sanderson talking about writing before I read any of his books.
I was about to ask that question. Yeah. I got distracted, which is, did you actually hear about Sanderson first through an advice thing rather than as a
yes
actual?
I'm 90% sure.
Yeah.
And Goodreads is not downloaded, so I'm not going to worry about it. But yeah, I went through a whole little kind of Sanderson phase. I read, you know, the Mistborn trilogy, and then I went through the Way of Kings books. I haven't finished the latest one, but I started it. And it's one of the things that you wrote a little bit about on the kind of transparency of the prose. It makes it they're very digestible books if you want to read them fast. This is not like Pynchon. You're not going to have to sit with a sentence and be like, oh shit, I got to think about that. Like there's little like Easter eggs and details. Like if you want to find where Wit is in the little like where he shows up in the background.
Details are like structural and plot based. They're not about the prose.
But like those kind of details that can be like quickly lost are not like those are for the nerds that want to go back through it. But like
the wiki guys,
you're not missing anything by skipping it.
Yeah, I was going to say like kind of I wrote a section on what appeals about Sanderson, but I actually started saying what's not impressive about Sanderson. What's not impressive about Sanderson, but at the same time very much works for him, one of the reasons he's popular, is his prose. And this is something which is, on his part, at least in part, deliberate. He aims for transparent prose, where one doesn't even notice the words on the page. You just derive from them the velocity and structure of the plot. And this is interesting, and it's something which works really well. I could really tear through Sanderson, and it works really well up until the point it doesn't. When that prose stops being transparent to you, when it stops being something you can see through, when you read other stuff and you go back to Sanderson and you're like, oh, this is just bad.
Yeah, I think that it's the prose is really utilitarian.
Yeah.
And there's I think the quote is John Waters, where he's talking about film, and he says that if you leave the theater, and the first thing you think is like, oh my god, the cinematography was beautiful, you just saw a bad movie. Like if you finish a book and you're like, oh wow, the prose was beautiful, you just read a bad book.
I couldn't disagree more. Like, I mean, I guess it depends. Like, there's two ideas. Like, there's a story and there's a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I think about the story, I don't want to be thinking about the prose. But when I'm talking about a book, I want to talk about the prose, right?
Yeah, I feel like that, and that's kind of a maximalist position that I don't think I really hold. But I do think that like Nabokov has really beautiful prose. I mean, not an endorsement of his personal life, or really his ideas all the time.
We endorse it all.
But like I think the separation between like I'm not gonna finish a Nabokov book. Like I just finished Glory. I'm not gonna sit down and the first thought is not like, oh wow, the prose is beautiful. The prose is beautiful, but it was in service of the novel itself as a larger work. And I think my first thought would be, wow, I love that novel, not the prose was so pretty.
Yeah, recently I read this fantasy novel. It's called Metal from Heaven. It is an insane book. It's like a industrial revolution, communist, lesbian, social bandit romance story.
Okay, interesting.
Where the kind of industrial metal, when touched by a person, kind of drives you to possibly hallucinate or possibly enter like a magical altered realm and communicate with the metal and so on. And that novel uses a UI structure in that, as in it's second and first person, as in it's from an I person, but it's directed towards a you. So it talks about, I did this for you. That's kind of the structure of the novel. And that works for it, as well as it having and that's obvious to me. And then I was fascinated otherwise, but didn't quite grok why it was. And later on, when I read other stuff about it, and I also realized why I didn't like the ending so much, is because it is in super tight first person. And I didn't notice that. And maybe that's more what you're saying, that as I was reading it, I didn't kind of grasp that what was drawing me in was it being super tight first person, because I was in a super tight first person situation where you don't
Mhm.
notice this sort of thing, right? Because that's how it works. It ties you in that much that you don't actually consciously think about it. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think there's some, certainly, I don't want to disagree completely. And maybe there's some things you notice and some things you don't. But I think with a novel, it's hard not to notice the prose, like, because the
Yeah.
prose is like even more important than like the cinematography, because it's also the script. Like it's like everything almost. Well, it is everything. Yeah, I mean the prose is everything, right? Like it depends how broad we're talking about the prose. Like, is the sentence structure prose? Yeah, I guess. Even like the typing is. I guess the typing is the only thing which isn't prose.
Yeah, sure. Like I didn't like the leading on the title page.
Well, occasionally they do experimental
No,
typing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they
What's his
try and
face?
they tell some of the story through the typing.
Yeah.
It didn't do that in what was that other novel we were discussing that we both read? The Wet Library.
Oh, Piranesi.
Yeah, that didn't use any weird typing stuff, did it? I can't
No,
remember.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Because I had a bit of diary stuff, but not like any weird typing, really.
No. Yes.
Red Dogger asks, have you guys read any Dragonlance or Forgotten Realms other D&D related novels? I don't think I have, actually. And it's a thing of like, I'm not sure if any of them are good.
I have no interest. All of my engagement with D&D has been like as a rule set to do my own world building and do my own like weird little thing. I have like no interest in using like or really engaging with the like the pre-written setting. It's not what D&D is interesting to like for me. So
I like Forgotten
the
Realms.
Forgotten Realms.
I would hypothetically read a good Forgotten Realms novel. I just don't know if they exist. I was playing D&D earlier today.
Also, Organic Cod over here is shouting out one of my favorite authors, Ursula K. Le Guin. So I have to up that.
You're still not an admin on here, are you? So you can actually highlight.
No, I'm not. Let's see. I don't know. Let's blame Jason for that.
One of the reasons I mentioned that I struggled with Paranasi was, I think, because I read very fast, and I'm very much, and also for Sanderson, what's good for Sanderson is I can focus just kind of on the plot and ignore a lot of the prose because I'm going so through it so fast. And the length of Sanderson is also didn't ever feel too long for me because, again, I was going through at it with great velocity. The appeal, I think, is that his books are long and complex in one way. They have this immensely complex word. I'll say the word is complex. It's not difficult, I would say. There's not a lot of contradictions in the world, but there's a lot of facts. There's a lot of structure. There's a lot of cultures. There aren't deep contradictions in these cultures, like the reversals that happen. Like there's a prominent reversal which we probably won't spoil, but we could, I guess, in Stormlight, if you know which one I mean.
Yeah. Also, like, I mean,
it's
not. Yeah. But I think the big twist in, at least at the first big twist in Stormlight, is not. It doesn't come out of the blue.
No, and I think that's
like
also what's appealing about Sanderson's stuff. He's very good at doing the thing where you realize the plot twist just before it happens, or when the twist happens, you're like, "Oh, right, that makes sense." Like you're shocked, you're kind of amazed and shocked by it, but at the same time, you're not like, "Oh, I didn't see that coming."
I feel like the twist, just because of how long I had to sit with the world and kind of what was going on, the twist there was like, okay, no, I kind of guessed it after like the first couple chapters, because I'm like, okay, this is, but also,
yeah, I mean, I wasn't wowed.
It's because I'm coming with kind of my own knowledge of like, human beings and ecology.
Yeah, I mean, the reversal in Stormlight didn't really mean anything to me because I was just like, well, it doesn't matter. They've been there for 3,000 years.
Sure.
Like, I don't believe in land back, so it didn't really mean anything to me.
That's fair.
So there's lots of characters. Remember, there's lots of magic, there's systems, and his magic is always systematized. You can learn it. It very much appeals to this sort of thing of like, like power scaling, where people want to argue whether Goku would be Randall Thor or whatever. In Sanderson, answers to these questions broadly exist, or at least can be speculated on in useful ways.
Yeah, and I think that kind of speculation is one of the things that feels like the most interesting about Sanderson. It's the way that the rules are then like expanded on, like kind of like a clever D&D artificer finding new ways to like make a nuke. And the way that is turned into like really like fruitful plot points in that at least in Stormlight is interesting.
Like a lot of me reading Sanderson was kind of waiting for when the rule would be broken. Like he would set up a certain set of rules, and you're like, which one of these is going to be the one that's broken, as to allow like a certain momentous occasion to happen, and how is he going to do it? Break the rule that he set up in such a way that's satisfactory. We've got a new chatter in chat, Donald MCE. Grats.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome.
We can tell Jason. There's lots of characters, there's lots of magic, there's lots of systems and plot threads, and lots of POVs. It's epic fantasy in this proper sense of like there's loads and loads of POVs. While at the same time, it's written entirely straightforwardly. Plot twists do happen, but it's made very explicit and clear what's going on. Like you're never really confused with what's happening in Sanderson.
No. And as the thing about Sanderson is that I think that the way that they keep the momentum going is this kind of it's an increasing scale and like grandness to it, and that the raising of stakes to keep the series going, I think is a kind of an existential problem for each of the series. I think it's why Mistborn is so much more successful in my mind than Stormlight.
Did you read the second Mistborn trilogy?
I did. Oh, well, so I didn't read the whole thing. I read the first 2 books.
Because that series... Sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, I think that series is an example of him doing the thing that I thought was interesting in some of the later things with the systems, but it not being quite as interesting.
Yeah, so I think there's a thing in Sanderson of like low versus high Cosmere, which Cosmere is its joint setting, as it's been mentioned. I think we have mentioned it's been mentioned in the chat. Low Cosmere, so nearly all of his novels are set in the same universe, but universe in a very real sense. Normally the action is happening very, very far away from each other in different solar systems. And lots of his books, especially the early ones, were low Cosmere, which means there wasn't much interaction between these different planets. But then in later books, we increasingly get high Cosmere. I think this is a problem because increasingly you need more and more like kind of wiki reading to kind of get what's going on, to understand who the people are. Like what it once was like a small Easter egg starts to become increasingly important as time goes on.
Yeah, it's like the kind of MCU problem where you gotta like watch 3 TV shows as homework to figure out what's happening in the tentpole, like big blockbuster, and like it's too much.
I said there's a lot going on, but it could be all summarized very well on a wiki page, which it is. If you've ever read the wiki, it's quite good. But
no, it's great. I often, especially in some of the later stuff, the wiki was very helpful because instead of like going back and rereading this chapter where I'm like, what is happening? Who are these characters? And then I go back and read the wiki. I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. I get it.
I was recently reading, I mentioned at the start, I was recently reading Strength of the Few, which was the sequel to Will of the Many, about a weird kind of pseudo-Roman setting where the magic works by like people seeding their will. So the people at the bottom of the pyramid seed half their willpower, and that makes them kind of grey, dull individuals. And then that goes into eight people from the lower sector go into one above, and that person is much more powerful because they'll have all this extra willpower in various ways. And then there's a pyramid which goes all the way up to like Roman senators, basically. But I really struggled in the second novel of that because I was like, who the fuck are all these people? Like, it was a one where they all have these quite pseudo-Roman names, and I just couldn't remember who all the people were.
Like you need
And
an org chart for your novel.
yeah, and it wasn't quite popular enough, though maybe it is now, since it's just New York Times #1 bestseller, to quite remember who to have enough of a wiki for me to just look all this stuff up. I also don't like looking stuff up.
Sure.
I want it to kind of be clear in the book. But then it's the thing of like, I've had read straight from the first one, I wouldn't have had nearly as much of problems. So I loved the first one. The second one, I think, and it's relevant for today, is suffering from Sanderson disease. I won't tell you how, but in a very particular and weird way, he goes from one POV to three POVs in the second book. And the three characters are really spread out from each other. They don't significantly interact with each other. And so what was a very tight story in the first one about one particular character doing one particular thing is really spread out. And it feels like even though it's a long novel, it's basically split into three entirely separate stories, there still isn't enough time for these three different characters. So I would say, I think the second book is also very good, probably in an objective sense, but it's quite distinctive from the first one. And so if you read the first one, you love it. You're not getting what you ordered if you wanted like a sequel in a real sense to the first one.
Let's see.
But the Cosmere stuff is also a lot of what appeals to people. I think for the most hardcore big fans, the most appealing part of Sanderson is the Cosmere stuff, because it's this slow, unrevealing, unraveling of a very long, grand mystery, which will happen over the lives of most of the fans of Sanderson, because Sanderson is an incredibly consistent writer, unlike a lot of fantasy writers, he can tell you when
George R. R. Martin. Excuse me, sorry, I had something in my throat.
He can tell you when the 10th book of the Starlight Archive is going to come out, but it's something like 2036. This is also gives a lot of boost to the books, because this grand unraveling mystery allows people to speculate and make fan theories. And because these systems are laid out, it's quite easy for people to engage in almost scientific speculation about the magic systems in terms of how they develop and how they would interact with each other and so on and so forth, and how these magic systems implicate kind of necessarily how the plot and the characters will move forward.
Yeah, it's a bit like historical materialism for like
right.
Fantasy story arcs.
It is an interesting thing that with Mistborn, like it's a revolutionary series, but like a bourgeois revolutionary series, or like a sub-bourgeois revolutionary series.
Yeah, no, it's a revolution, but it's a weird revolution. It's a revolution that doesn't like track clearly onto like a real understanding of like class in the society, even, because the powers are weirdly,
I always identified the Lord Ruler with Cromwell.
I mean, he always felt like a little, Snidely Whiplash to me. Like I thought he was, fine, but just like it's such an alien figure that he was not the compelling part of those books to me.
Yeah. It was funny when I learned that Sanderson was a Mormon. Not at that point really knowing what a Mormon is. If anyone, probably not how Americans learn about Mormonism, but I basically learned about Mormonism through Brandon Sanderson. That and Heart of Iron too. But that made me assume that he was conservative. But actually, as it turns out, he's just like the only lib Mormon who's also faithful to the church.
Well, so I don't think that's really true. There's definitely like a conservative wing of Mormonism, but there is like a decent chunk of Mormons that are like, you know, they're liberal. Like they're it's not, they might have like, I think that they kind of track through like the Obama years. Like they were definitely, you know, anti-gay marriage, but like pro, you know, gay people not being like stoned to death in
Yeah.
like, you know, 2008. But they've like, you know, evolved, and they're like, okay, we should they're liberal on social values, and, you know, kind of ambivalent on like outside of, you know, like a couple religious things. They're really not the they're basically just like standard Democrats.
I remember that the Mormons were the only ones that like kind of got serious about voting for that like alternative to Trump because Trump was too rude, but they still wanted to vote for a conservative guy. So you got like Mick Mullen or something. So he got like 20% of the
Oh,
state.
oh God, yeah. The was he like ex CIA or something?
Probably. It was interesting. I think in Wheel of Time, it's very strongly speculated, and it seems to be true that Robert Jordan just changed one of the twists because everyone online guessed who it was.
Yeah, and I think that that kind of, that relationship with the audience can be really destructive.
Yeah,
The
and Robert Jordan
like
also hated fan fiction.
like the R plus L equals J was, you know, I think right, but a lot of the speculation that people were doing about, well, about A Song of Ice and Fire, but really about Game of Thrones, it was speculation in order to guess what was going to happen on the TV show.
Yeah,
And I think that the showrunners really misunderstood like the things that made that the text that they were working with interesting.
right.
So when they saw, oh shit, someone guessed it, we have to change it and make it, you know, different, or like, you know, switch it up. And then they like, you know, forgot about the whole like setup and payoff thing that
Yeah,
you
because
do in
I think
fiction.
Sanderson is like Sanderson is really good at everything apart from like writing sentences, which is a bizarre thing for an incredibly successful author. But another thing that Sanderson is incredibly good at is like audience management, audience
Mhm.
engagement, and so on and so forth. Like he completely is not going to be put off from doing a plot twist because people guessed it. The only thing he's
Yeah.
going to do is he's going to not answer questions on that topic.
And it seems like he tries to be like pretty consistent. I saw there was one thing that he like put out a press release that he made, like he misspoke at like answering a question, because he was like, oh, someone sent me this clip of me talking years ago, this specific thing I said is not accurate, and then
Yeah.
that's all he said.
He's also done a thing where he's been like, what I said then I thought was going to be true, but actually I've changed my mind since.
Yeah.
But yeah, that means there's a whole website, which I think was originally used for Robert Jordan quotes, which is used to index like the word of Sanderson.
Mhm. And like, you know, if that's what it draws you to reading, I'm not going to say that that's a bad way to engage with art. It's not
Yeah, obviously,
necessarily what I
to
would
be clear,
choose, but
if the choice is between not reading and reading Sanderson, I would say read Sanderson 100 times out of 100.
mhm.
And I think that is often like a genuine thing where if people weren't reading Sanderson, they wouldn't really be reading anything.
Or they'd be reading romantasy
Yeah.
on the other side, which I've not read a lot, but I did read, or I tried to read Fourth Wing, which is
The
it's not,
biggest one, right?
it's not properly monster fucking. It's like a, you know, horny
Because they're,
teenagers
they're,
that
they're dragon riders, but they don't
dragon
fuck the
riding.
dragons. They fuck the other dragon riders.
Yeah, but that the prose is, like Sanderson, very transparent. Um,
This was the twist from Robert Jordan they didn't go through with.
mm, yeah, not enough of a Robert Jordan fan to be able to engage with that. But I will say that the thing about the fourth wing prose is that, like Sanderson, it's kind of transparent.
Yeah.
But what's behind the glass is lacking.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, romance is fundamentally going to be a genre which struggles, especially when we live in a time in bourgeois society where we believe that love can conquer all obstacles. Under that circumstance, where we don't actually believe that there's anything wrong with someone from a certain social status marrying someone from a different one or whatever, what is the real obstacle in a romance novel? And it ends up a lot of the time the plot is kept going longer than 80 pages due to things like misunderstandings or forced, like, not being near each other and so forth and so forth.
Well, this one, there's not even like a real, like, it's just like, oh, like a love triangle, and maybe they don't like each other, but I don't know, maybe it's just me being annoyed, but like the constant, like,
bring it in the wrong color. Go on, sorry.
oh no, there was a constant, like, oh, I'm so small and delicate. Like,
Right.
I couldn't possibly, but look, I'm fast and I can think my way through, and I'll poison you. It just felt very like like Emily Ratajkowski, like, hiding in like an oversized coat, like, just like, what are we doing here?
I'm still waiting for them to get to the point where they solve romance triangles by just going poly.
Yeah, just make the boys kiss. It'll be fine.
Oh, I mean that kind of poly, but also you can do that, yeah.
Yeah, like, just
$5.
Make a little throuple.
We don't know if it was from Jason, for Jason, or for Ben, but $5.
Yeah.
I hadn't read, I think, before this year or last year, any Warhammer 40k novels, but I had started this year. Though the problem with that is almost the opposite of Sanderson, where what's interesting to me about 40k books is generally how they fit in within this broader universe, which I'm very interested in. But fundamentally, the books aren't the move of the plot in 40k. What sells on the table is what moves the plot. So they introduced a new faction for the elves, basically, the Inari, who seemed like they were going to do a very interesting revival of the elves in that setting. But that's not going to happen anymore because they released the Inari model set and it fucking no one bought it. So they're going to do something else with them. And that's the end of that plot thread.
And so is there a way that the because I'm not really familiar with Warhammer, is there a way that the like actual play at the table affects the larger story arcs? Like, if are there like, if like at the end of some like big tournament the orcs crush everyone else, does that affect what actually happens in the larger story?
So they go back and forth on that, but it's certainly something they've done before. So they'll also they'll do their best to like rig it or whatever. The big thing there was the Chaos, like the bad guys, would constantly do black crusades around Cadia, this particular point. And then finally, during the 13th Crusade, they finally won that, and then that was over. I can't tell you exactly how much actual effect tabletop play had on this, as opposed to tabletop purchases. But it's certainly something that Games Workshop played with a lot, and it's very interesting. But it doesn't help the novels.
Sure, there's. I don't know all the details, but have you heard of a game called Legends of the Five Rings?
Was that a card game from the early 2000s?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Yeah, I've heard the story, but you can tell it the audience.
Okay, so there's yeah, neither of us were there, so we don't have all that inside information. But there was this kind of card-based RPG, a little bit like, I think he played something like Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
But it's set around these different clans in like a kind of fictionalized Japan setting. And they would do these giant tournaments where the different clans would compete, and like who what like players running different clans or like how specific, how the like the bracket worked out exactly would be translated, and like specific plays from the games would be
Yeah,
mentioned in like later released cards,
yeah, yeah.
and
They'd be
how,
like immortalized.
yeah, and the way that the game played, month to month, or I guess quarter to quarter would be, would completely adapt, and the story would change, and you'd have to really keep up with what was happening
I think
in
what's
the
most
scene.
impressive about that is they actually just stopped. They were
Yeah.
like, "This is going to be the final set. What you do in this will decide what happens." Everyone's like, "Nah, they won't. They'll just release another. They'll blah blah blah." And they didn't. They were just like, "No, the game's over. We completed it, guys. We're done."
Well, yeah, and then a decade later, they did like a redo thing, but they're not doing the same thing. It's like
Yeah.
we're doing re-releases and retreading, like we're doing reruns of what already happened.
So Red Dogra asked, I want to start reading for 140k, but it seems so overwhelming. I can't seem to find a good list of where to start. So I pasted in the chat. It might not be actually be. If I've forgotten, oh no, we're on Twitter. I just can't post to Twitter. I posted a novel in the chat, which is a Warhammer 40k novel with actually good prose, which is Requiem Infernal. It might not be the place you want to start. It's where I started, but it might not be the place you want to start because it is a horror novel. But it's a very well written, interesting horror novel, which you benefit from having at least a broad understanding of Warhammer 40k, but it mostly stands alone. And it's also part of kind of a series by this guy. So if you want to hear more from him and more from the characters in it, you can read the other works by him.
Yeah, I mean,
For Sanderson, I think one of the most. Sorry, what were you going to say?
no, I was gonna say, I think where if we wanted to put a like an intro point for Sanderson,
Oh right, yeah.
what do you think the best starting place would be?
I don't know.
Because I think it's Mistborn, but
Well, it depends what your tolerance is for young adult, right?
sure, that's fair.
Because it is.
Well, if you
Like,
don't have a
I don't.
tolerance, I don't think that.
Some people
I
get
don't think.
really offended when I call something. I remember people getting absolutely fuming to me when someone was like, I was like, "Oh, I don't want to read this novel because it's young adult," and they were like, and "It's like, I'm not saying young adult stuff is like inherently bad or immoral. I just don't particularly want to read it myself."
I don't think that you can. I mean, I don't think that.
Look,
Nice. I can't read any of that, but
it's
the glare is messing with it.
it's Black Lotus, Magic's most expensive card.
Oh, look at you flexing on us. I've got what can I flex?
Hell yeah!
Here. Oh, I've got a preamp that's broken on my desk that I was gonna fix and didn't get around to it. Scale models of people.
Oh yeah, you still need to make your scale models.
Yeah, God, I have a long night tonight. But I think that if you don't have a bit of a tolerance for young adult writing, I don't think that you're going to get a lot out of Sanderson. I think that you're going to be annoyed more than you're going to enjoy it.
Because I mean, my favorite novel from Sanderson is the first Stormlight book. Mm-hmm. But whether that's good introduction or not, I would say actually I think the biggest tolerance you need to have there is, do you like novels which are 1,100 pages?
Yeah, it just, I don't know. Most of like at that point, this feels mean to say, but like at what point do you just like recommend a real book for a grown-up?
Well, it depends, right? Like, depends what the person wants. Like, I struggle with literary fiction because I just don't like reading about settings which aren't, like, I don't like reading about Earth. Well, I don't like reading fiction about Earth.
Okay. Let me see. I'm trying
Because
to
I mean,
look at
there's
my.
some people who are like, oh, I don't like reading fiction at all because I'd rather read about something real. I'm kind of in the middle position of that, where I don't want to read a book about something which could have happened just to me.
You want it to be a little alien.
Yeah,
Um,
I want it to be something impossible.
you don't want to. Your normal people is not screaming out as like your next top read.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get into this later when we talk about how mental health is portrayed in Sanderson. But I don't
Mhm.
like realistic characters. I don't like reasonable characters. I don't like characters which are anything like me or anyone else I know. That's not what I'm interested in. I like these strange, heroic archetypes. These like
See,
people with bizarre Bronze Age mortality or whatever, morality.
yeah, I kind of disagree because I think that the grounded personalities and the like the realism to kind of personal psychology is probably my favorite part of the A Song of Ice and Fire books.
Hmm. I think what's interesting about Song of Ice and Fire, well, I think, sorry, what's the best thing about Song of Ice and Fire is Martin's absolute mastery of POV.
Yes.
And the thing is so there are characters in the novel which are kind of reasonable people from the POVs. And we also see from POVs people that are absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that very much works because he's a master of POV, and showing the insane people lets you see that when he's doing normal people, he isn't just writing to default, that he's also there doing something particularly literary. But I would say in A Song of Ice and Fire, the normal, reasonable people end up dead quite early on.
Yeah. Also, that like the longer you survive in the like just existing with like human psychology in the world of Ice and Fire, the less kind of normal and well adapted to our society you become. Right? That the circumstances of this world is what makes these people fucking out of their mind. Like I don't think that you get the mountain in polite society. That's a psychology of a person that comes out of like
Yeah.
constant warfare or like
I mean, in
Fort Bragg.
American society, the mountain would just be serving a 20 stretch.
Yeah, or like in doing questionable things in Sinaloa.
Yeah.
But that is a personality type that would come out of like some real.
Dogra clearly just worked out, I can probably just Google Stefan's name and find their Goodreads account. So after linking that, they just got to my profile, I guess. But yeah, the Curse of Chalion book was really, really fantastic. That was, again, an example of great prose. It took me a while to get interested in reading that because the main character is kind of like, he's not old, but he's broken down by kind of the circumstances he's been in. That didn't really appeal to me. I still went for it. And then I got absolutely driven mad because I went on the Goodreads page and I looked at the reviews, and obviously I just should stop doing this. But there was like 1-star reviews because there was a romance age gap between the main character and the person they romanced, like the very end of the book. And I was like, Red Dogger did not, in fact, Google my name and find my Goodreads profile. They just remembered from a few months ago, which is perhaps more touching.
Yeah. It's not your unsuccessful OPSEC. It's the audience caring.
A fascinating thing about Sanderson's kind of commitment to achieving the world of his book structurally is he employs, I think it's 2 people full time to make sure that there's no gaps of plotting in his novels and to keep it all consistent with every other novel and so on and so forth, which is not something I think any other author has ever done.
Yeah, not that I know of. It's a when I read because the preface on the newest one, the newest Stormlight that I cannot remember the name of for the life of me. It goes into some of like the acknowledgments of the size of his team, and it's kind of astounding, like the number of people that are working on this. And I think that also is another thing that might be really impacting the quality or the readability of the books, is that I do think that there's an element of kind of design by committee that's happening as his team expands, and as
but also
like,
designed
the
by
Sanderson
committee,
empire.
But everyone within it, they're all insiders. I think there's more and more influence from insiders and not outsiders in terms of like editors and so on.
Well, yeah, the editor is, yeah, when the ultimate boss is the author and not like everything is kind of in-house under him, it's, you know, it's a bit like,
his 4 bonus COVID novels, they were self-published, I guess, because he did them all through Kickstarter.
Yeah. And I read one of those that was actually like, a nice, fun, short little read.
Bryn, can you Google how much money his Kickstarter made? I know it was the biggest Kickstarter ever. I want to say 60 million. Maybe that's too high.
42 million.
42 million. Yeah, I mean that's a lot of fucking money.
That's, yeah. I don't think I'm ever gonna see $42 million in my life. Like just even like secondhand. I don't think that there's any kind of like.
If you think of all the transactions you've ever seen in your life, it's happening in front of you.
Yeah. Well, how far? Like I've walked. You walk down Wall Street. I guess that counts.
Okay, yeah.
If I look through a window,
you'd have to unless you're like looking through the window,
Yeah, well, you can do that.
Oh, the window's like high up though. I feel like you don't do a big business deal on the ground floor.
No, but you can see they've got the stupid Bloomberg terminals in the window. I'm counting that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and this big structural stuff is why the main reason I was sad to get sick of Sanderson. Normally when I get sick of an author, I don't really mind. But when I got sick of Sanderson, when I failed to read Stormlight 5, I was then not locked out. I'm choosing to be locked out of kind of the speculation about how the universe is developing. Because I could just spoil myself on what happens in book 5 and then continue with the universal speculation. But at the point where I've stepped out of it like that, what's the point in continuing on, If I'm not actually reading the books.
This feels... There is a weird way that is like emerging with like engaging with art through summary
sources.
Yeah, like there's like TikTok videos of like movies, but it is just the plot read out by like an AI voice.
Yeah.
It feels so strange to me. It's like, yeah, it's like secondhand sourcing a novel that you could just read.
Right.
Or like if you're interested in an author, like, oh, I really like that book, let me go read the Spark Notes. Like that feels insane to me. But that is kind of the engaging with things via wiki.
Do you know the only genre or whatever I do this for? I do this for horror novels because I'm too scared to watch them, but I like the idea of them, and so I like read summaries of them. I don't mind reading horror. I just can't watch it.
No, so it goes. I'm not a big horror movie guy. Jason's gonna crucify us if he ever watches this, but yeah.
Yeah, crucify Ben and Jason are gonna come for us.
Yeah. We're staking out no, horror movies are scary and I don't like them.
Why did I get sick of Sanderson? I mean, one reason that we've already discussed is the prose. and the general juvenile and shit nature of the humor. It's very much not impressive. I think even his biggest fans say Sanderson is very bad at humor for anyone who isn't like 6. I don't know if you remember how far you got in book 5, but probably farther than me, because I stopped at the point where Kaladin is hanging out with his family and his like little brother, and they made like 6 poo fart shit jokes on like 2 pages, and I was like, I'm over. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that like, especially reading, like I never got any humor out of them. Like there's parts that are fun, but I don't think I ever like got a chuckle reading Sanderson. The jokes just don't land. I'm there for the speculation and like the I do think like the hard magic systems, as much as I like kind of ideologically feel like they're sometimes bad.
Yeah.
The way Sanderson does them is like satisfying. It's fun. I like
Yeah,
thinking about the mechanics.
Good at them. He's good
Yeah.
at them. The trouble is if how useful his writing advice is for others in this sense.
Sure. Yeah. And like in terms of like magic in a narrative, I come back to thinking about Le Guin and the way she writes magic as this like thing that you can study and get better at and get better knowledge, but you can't really have like perfect knowledge over it. It's not, and when you try to do things and when you try to do like powerful things, it it punishes you. And I think you had a quote in the summary about the soft magic systems providing problems for the plot, not solutions. And I think that that's successful. But in terms of the hard magic systems, like if we look at Mistborn, there are some with the magic system is, if you haven't read it, there are people that can essentially eat heavy metals and burn them up in their stomach to get some specific power. And they're kind of like pairs between the powers. Like one is like a push and a pull, and some of them affect metal and some of them affect emotions and some of them affect like your like extrasensory detection of other people using the magic.
You can all imagine it working very well in anime.
Or a TTRPG.
Yeah.
Which Sanderson actually has been developing and I think recently released. Like and I think that this kind of dovetails in with a discussion of like lit RPGs, which is something I don't understand, but is part of this conversation. Where the mechanics and like lit RPG is really just like let's put D&D stats into the book and like make leveling up part of what happens, and I don't understand that. But like in Mistborn and like kind of in Stormlight, as their like powers develop and as you get more understanding of that, the systems are like locked down in specific ways, and then once you kind of understand that like this power can do one specific thing or functions in one specific way, then like let's see what we can MacGyver this into doing. It's a specific type of storytelling that is really effective, and I think one of the most interesting parts of Sanderson's writing. The story change if the magic system changed, Soon says. And I think definitely. Like the magic system is an inherent part of the world. And everything is really revolves around the way that these systems work and they start to interact. It's a bit like I mean, I won't say emergent storytelling because I don't think that's accurate, but the way that the systems interact and like the world itself is kind of set up does set like a certain, back to the point you were making before, Stefan. Like there's only so many ways the fates can weave together the fabric of what's currently going on in the Cosmere.
Yeah. I was going to say, so yeah, otherwise I just kind of whined about his editors getting less and less power over him, which we've already mentioned. A big problem for me with Sanderson, and one we've already mentioned in part, is his commitment to mental realism.
Mm-hmm.
Sanderson has the idea and tries to do his best that when he's modeling the minds of his characters, especially the ones which are meant to be in some way mentally ill or troubled and so on, which is most of them, to attempt to model their minds upon what we take to be true about contemporary minds based on the science of contemporary psychology. So the main character in the Stormlight Archives, Kaladin, has clinical depression. He's not depressed in a normal literary sense. He has DSM, clinical depression, and very much fits within that system. This marks him out in a key way compared to the usual heroic protagonist, who genuinely makes straightforward progress, and once they get over something, it's done with. Instead, Kaladin realistically regresses, has bad days, has ups and downs, has bad months and years. Some people, especially those who suffer from clinical depression or clinical anxiety or whatever, like this, while others are decidedly not. And very often the conversation between the advocates and the opponents is a lot of talking past each other. Because the supporters will say, like, the opponents will say, like, oh, I don't like how Kaladin keeps progressing, going over the same ground again. And the fans will say, oh, but, this is realistic. And the opponent will say, well, I know it's realistic, but I don't want it to be realistic. They'll be like, but this is representation of actual depression. They'll be like, I don't care. Like, that's not what I'm looking to get out of fantasy.
Mm-hmm. I think Organicod had mentioned a similar thought kind of when we were just starting in the chat, that this, like, Kaladin coming back and regressing again and again was just not like a satisfying plot point.
Yeah, and it links. I think it's very clearly linked in the fact that like he's doing hard depression, in the same sense he's doing hard magic.
Yeah. No,
100%. The DSM is his magic system for Kaladin's like internal personality.
Yeah, and like at a certain point where's the line between like grounded and like just buried under the ground, like too grounded to move?
So I was going to say, if Sanderson wanted to do a system for depression, he shouldn't use the DSM. He should have made his own.
To have magical depression?
Well, not necessarily even magical depression, because obviously maybe you disagree, but I don't think clinical depression, in the sense we understand it now, existed in 4th century BC Athens. Like, human emotions have always existed, but I think within different societal structures, they will appear in radically different ways.
Sure. I mean, well, like, I don't think that the description of like the symptomology of Kaladin would be that different if we called it melancholia.
Well, it depends. I mean, he can choose whatever symptomology, right? But
like,
but I think if he was thinking in those terms, Kaladin would be introspective in a much more interesting way. So I think if you by thinking of melancholy being melancholic, we're much more thinking of someone who, there's something more romantic there about the depression.
Yeah, I think that the way that Kaladin as a character kind of medicalizes his own depression if we're thinking of his character as like this, like, you know, wannabe surgeon, that kind of makes sense. But
like a
but
21st
that's,
century surgeon, like
yeah, like, and not it. I think that his character does feel a little stuck between this kind of like heroic or like wannabe heroic figure and the kind of instinct to be like the kind of doctor protector figure. um in a way that, like, I don't think, like, those, they're not tied together in a satisfying way
no,
in in Kaladin's own like self-conceptualization, I think.
right. I think like Sanderson has like hard magic, but like very
Mhm.
soft social psychology.
Yeah, and I think that like the, if to take another character, the when Shallan, her whole like, you know, multiple personality thing is like, that's not what like dissociative identity disorder actually looks
Right.
like.
It isn't. And Shallan's my favorite character.
Yeah. Like that, that is a very much like a pop fiction, not at all like really psychologically grounded interpretation of what DID looks like.
But it is grounded in the world we're talking about because it has to do with weird shatterings of souls and all that bullshit.
100%. And I think it works, it like, it's consistent, but I think it's more narratively satisfying while like kind of having like a bit of you know, what's the word, like verisimilitude, I guess.
Yeah.
Soon as asking if this would fall under fantasyisms versus Echo's medievalisms. Well, I mean, Echo was also like a medievalist in a way that I don't think that there are like fantasyists. Like it was part of a larger like literary movement that feels smaller and more contained than like whatever fantasy is now. Um, and I guess there are like, you know, waves of fantasy. I think that I'm literally thinking of a Sanderson clip talking about like, you know, there's the, you know, early Tolkien stuff, and then people aping Tolkien, and then people being like, oh, maybe we should not just directly ape Tolkien, and we're on like, you know, round
Yeah,
3 or
I'm just
4
gonna
of
say
that.
solo before. I just have this. I've had this quote on this message on the screen for ages. But yeah, the Critical Dragon. If you want to hear like an actual literary professor talk about fantasy, he does some really great stuff. Yeah, this is. I mean, actually, Sanderson mentions this in his first law or second law of magic, where the most interesting thing about magic is its limitations and is its costs. And he says, and I agree with him completely, that Magic the Magic the Gathering, A Wheel of Time has the most interesting cost to magic ever, which is that when men use it, they go insane. And this is set up in the circumstance where a man, a very particular man, has to be the one to save the world. Then, of course, Ranulf Thor suffers greatly, but there's a constant tension there of how much is he going mad because of our contemporary ideas of like stress and depression or whatever, because, you know, the world is on his shoulders, and how much is it this magical influence upon him? How much of it is kind of solvable along these two different axes? And how much, you know, I think that's fantastic and a million times better than what's going on with Kaladin, where it exists basically separately from the world he's in.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other like literary representations of madness that I think are like successful in a way that would be interesting here. There's I don't think it's a direct you know, parallel here, but I do think it might be interesting to talk about. Have you read Master and Margarita? You should read it. It's great. It's a Soviet novel that there's a whole history about, like, you know, it's a novel that's very critical of Stalin, but the author was kind of like a favorite playwright of Stalin, so he got a lot of leeway, but he couldn't really publish this, and then he burnt it, and then he like rewrote it. It's an interesting backstory, but it's a woven narrative of a novelist who writes this you know, kind of grounded but, like, you know, historically maybe accurate, we're not sure, short novel about Jesus Christ. And like specifically really focusing on like the story told from the perspective of Pontius Pilate,
right?
As, like, you know, this kind of, he's having to navigate local politics, and then this he's got to deal with the rabbis and, you know, the head authority in Rome, and he's trying to balance this and keep his own seat kind of functional. And then this guy like comes in speaking, you know, causing trouble, and he keeps trying to give him an out, like, please just like say, don't, like, he keeps trying to transmit through his thoughts, like, don't you don't have to say that, like, you can just deny it and I'll let you go. Right. But it's this narrative, and then the narrative of the writer who is in Moscow, like kind of in the height of kind of Stalinist paranoia, and a mysterious professor comes to town that turns out is the devil from, like, the Bible, like the biblical devil.
Oh yeah.
Who comes on and he presents himself as a foreign professor who's putting on a show of black magic. And he drives like Moscow insane. He causes all kinds of like insane shenanigans. He gets this author who like sees him and then goes a little, like, he's driven. He like has like an episode after, you know, seeing kind of incontrovertible proof of magic that he kind of, as a good Soviet atheist, does not believe in. Goes insane, gets put in an asylum. And the whole thing is like, you get chapters of the text that I think is implied that this is the text of Jesus that he wrote and was getting, you know, feedback on. Yes, it's Master and Margarita. I don't have a copy within arm's distance, but it's the Soviet author gets sent to this asylum where he meets this like author, and the author is having this, he goes this whole dialogue of, you know, giving up your sanity and just at a certain point you've seen things that you cannot rationally comprehend, and you just have to like take the step into like, okay, I'm not sane anymore. But because that's the only way to exist in like, you know, a properly like atheist Soviet society, when you've seen incontrovertible proof of like, you know, biblical evil and black magic.
Right.
It's it's a great read. I think if I was like an actual Christian and understood the Bible a little more, I might get more out of the Pontius Pilate stuff. But I think it ends up being like an interesting like kind of defense of him as a like a politician that had like specific concerns that he had to address.
I realized recently from watching myself on cam, I don't nod good. I just kind of bob my head forward. I don't actually nod properly. We're already past the hour, so I'm not going to go into the next section. But if anyone in chat wants us to react to anything, comment on anything, now's the time. And also, Quinn, did you have anything you wanted to say before we start heading towards the end?
I mean, nothing specifically. I'm just like talking about random books I like at this point.
That's good. We're all happy with that.
Yeah, it's Mikhail Bulgakov. It's a wonderful novel. I think it's probably my favorite Soviet novel. Favorite Russian novel in general. If I'm gonna expand it out, but if you get anything from reading from this podcast, yeah, maybe skip the Sanderson and go back to
and just read weird Soviet novels.
Yes. And when you're done with that, go read Roadside Picnic.
I should have talked more about Metal from Heaven. Insane book. Because for most of the book, I mean, this is spoilers, but I don't think anyone's going to read it. So it's an IU format, but for most of the book,
I had a recommendation actually on the whole IU format that I think you might like. It's not fantasy. It's kind of fantasy. It's more sci-fi. But it's a really short read called "This Is How You Lose the Time War."
Right. Yeah. When I said about the IU thing, my friend was like, "That's how the time war goes."
Which is it's like 110 pages or something. It's short, and it's just such tight prose that progresses so quickly in a really interesting way.
So with Sun Eater, I've seen it like many times on Goodreads, but I haven't actually made the plunge. So if anyone wants to make an argument for reading Sun Eater, now's your time, now's your chance. And then eventually there'll be a show on it in like 6 to 9 months. But yeah, because the IU in Metal from Heaven, for 60 to 70% of the book, the U is as if she's talking to a grave. But then that character appears and the structure has to change because the U is certainly a person that's walking around. There was one where like everyone like as a reader, you were like, oh, the U is that person, but the main character doesn't get it until very late. We're not going to be reading Scott Bakker.
There's another actually example of the second person being used in a really interesting way, and I think it's Dexter.
Oh, right,
the TV show.
Who's you in Dexter?
It's the audience.
Oh, right, it's
because I like in the novel that it's adapted from, this dark passenger he has is like an actual, like it's literally like an alien intelligence or like an alien like thing that gets embedded into him and drives him to murder. But in the show, the dark passenger is like the fourth wall. Like it when he's like he does the kind of like monologues and like turns to camera, and like the talk about the thing that drives him to kill is like the audience that wants to see it. And it, like, watching the show in that way, it becomes an interesting like meta text on like, the audience's drive to see violence and
right, because obviously we want to see him kill the people.
Yeah, it's a TV show. Go, yeah, stab the child molester.
Get him. Oh yeah, because Dexter's one of the ones where he like at least allegedly tries to be a humanitarian serial killer, right?
Yeah, he's he's a serial killer with a conscience.
Wow. That's all from me. Is that all from you, Quinn?
Yeah, like and subscribe. Give Jason money so that we can keep doing
Jason money so he smiles.
Give that money, I guess. We've got Patreons, we've got comment sections. Do the
I was talking to Jason before the show yesterday. He's like, I'm really bad at asking for money, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think that we should do it's a little too late for this now, but I think that we should do a super chat goal. Like if we get $35, we'll play the racist guessing game.
Yeah, I think also from yesterday, like we like compared to like mainstream streams I watch, like we don't spend enough time acknowledging like each super chat we get.
Sure.
Like some we
We don't
spend a long time
incentivize
on,
them.
but some also like don't even really get acknowledged properly. And that was like something I was doing when Jason was away because I've just got admin powers. But like it shouldn't be me doing that really.
Yeah.
Because also people don't want to hear me thanking them. They want to hear the big man thanking them.
So what we've got out of this is we should yell at Jason more to do his job.
we should tell Jason to tell people to give him money.
There we go. All right. I think we've we pulled it out.
Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.
Cool outro. Playing.
Start eating that trash can.
I already am eating from the trash can all the time.